Hello everybody, this is Jerry Mateo with Nada. Welcome back to another video. Today we have a new plugin from Kiive Audio, and that is going to be their KStrip channel strip. Now, this is a very cool plugin. Taking a look at the UI, as you can see, this is an EQ, a compressor, and a saturation section with an output section that allows you to have stereo width control, gating, and transient designer. Now, as you can obviously see, this is a little bit interesting because you have individual modules. You can move the harmonics, compression, and EQ section any way you want. And if we grab an option right here, let's grab this one. You see that this is actually giving you the ability to have multiple different emulations inside of each module. So taking a look at this, we clearly have an SSL, a Neve, and an API preamp. We also have the SSL, API, and Neve EQ, as well as an Neve, API, and SSL compressor. And this isn't a specific EQ or compressor. From what I'm noticing, this essentially is kind of like 1073 with an extra band, or 1081. And then you have the 4-band EQ, and then you have the SSL. But you don't have full control over the Q factor. You just have high Qs and normal Q factors. And on the API and SSL EQs, you have the high and low shelf that can become a bell by just clicking right here. The compressor is a little bit more straightforward. This is basically an SSL channel style compressor. You have ratio, attack, release, and threshold. This kind of reminds me of the newer SSL compressors that came out in 500 series. They kind of sound similar to that. And then the Neve is clearly a diode bridge compressor. It's very snappy, very aggressive, and basically sounds like it's attacking you at all times. The API, this is a 2500 style compressor. And the cool thing is API basically makes 500 series modules of everything. The 2500 bus compressor, there's a 500 series module for that. And this kind of does resemble that workflow. You have feed forward, feedback, hard, medium, and soft knee, as well as your threshold, ratio, attack, release, makeup gain. You have your sidechain filter, and then your mix knob. And then for the EQs, you all have high shelf and bell, high mid bell, low shelf and bell, and then high pass and low pass filter. And then the harmonic section will have your distortion and your even odd harmonic frequencies that you can actually accent or attenuate. So you can have more even harmonics or more odd harmonics in your distortion. You also have input and output gain linking. You have a pre-auto, which basically makes the preamp gain automatically compensate down, and then your oversampling, your A and B section, and then your undo, redo, and resize options. Your stereo width control is going to give you the ability to widen the stereo image of already stereo signals. And the high pass filter here is going to determine at what point it will start using the mid-side matrix. So if you have it set to 100 hertz or 150, it will basically not touch anything under 150 and increase everything above it. The gates can be pre or post, and I like to set it to pre, and this has threshold, attack, release, range, hold, and look ahead. And then the transient shaper can be pre and post. And this is basically doing a MS, like a millisecond value, where you can increase and decrease the attack and increase and decrease the sustain by 10 milliseconds, which is a very short amount, but also very, very viable for something that's designed to be a all-in-one channel strip. It leaves it to be transparent enough to not destroy the signal, but audible enough where it will do something that you need it to. You have your output gain, and then that's about it. All right, so we have a session here. This is a session that was recorded at a festival that me and my friend Derek Olds were doing. I was doing front of house. He was doing monitor mixes. We recorded the entire festival. We got permission to do it. And let's just check it out. I will bypass all processing and press play. We're going to turn on all processing. And then let's bypass every instance of KStrip.
بیا بیا دلم برات تنگه آسمون چشات چه خوش رنگه تو لبات قنچه خندونه شون منی عزیز دردونه بیا بیا با هم بریم خونه بی تو خونمون.
And if you look at my meters right here, you're going to see that I'm not really doing so much gain reduction or anything like that. This is mostly giving me harmonics and frequency tonal shifts that's making it sound better. I'm also utilizing the stereo width control and stuff in certain instances. It's doing a lot. Now for the drums, I'm actually using universal audio microphones. So I have my SD5 for the kick, and that is using the Beta 52 emulation. I have the SD7 for the snare, which is this one. And I actually really like the way this microphone sounds. I don't use the emulation on it at all. I have it bypassed. I actually think it's a perfect snare microphone. The SD3s, I have 3 of them, and I'm using different sections of the D4 microphone. And I've actually owned all of these microphones, the real ones, and I was very impressed. The universal audio microphones sound very good, especially in a live and recorded sense. But let's solo this up and I can show you what this sounds like. So it does a lot, but you're hearing that the Kiive Audio KStrip is really doing a lot of magic here. It's enhancing all of the EQs and saturation and phase shifts that the Hemisphere plugin is doing. So let's break it down and let's take a look at the kick drum. Solo it up. And as you hear, it's pretty cool. So what I'm doing is I'm starting off with my harmonics. I can drag and drop this anywhere I want, but I liked starting with the harmonics. I turned down my even harmonics. I'm using the API saturation and the API EQ. I actually really like the API module on this. I'm not a massive fan of API EQs unless it's the graphic EQ, because I actually own one and they're amazing on kick drums. Kiive Audio, you should add that, by the way. If they add the graphic EQ, that would make this thing flawless. But I'm using the API EQ, and then I'm going into the SSL compression because I really liked it. It's very, very just the most transparent one here. And it sounded great. I'm using the transient shaper to shorten the decay and increase the attack. And it's really simple. Let's bypass everything and we'll bring it in one at a time. As you hear, it kind of made it a little bit more pillowy. And then we turn on the transient shaper. It just makes it more pokey. It's really cool. I also really like how when you change modules, it actually resets the EQ, so you can have different EQs for each one. It does sound a little bit different. And to me, it's a different EQ shape, but I really like the way that the API sounds. It's just a different shape and it's working really well for me. Let's move on to the snare drum. Now for the snare drum, I need to remember to take off the Hemisphere plugin because I do not like it. And we are going to just check this one out. Now for this, I'm actually moving things around. I'm starting off with a lot of EQ. I'm cutting a ton of low frequencies at a high Q. I'm boosting at 137, and then I'm using a high pass filter. I can go up to about 90 or 100. And then I'm boosting at, 5K, about 10 dBs almost. I'm using a lot of compression in the feedback mode for API style compression. I have everything linked because these are all mono tracks. You can do mid-side, left, right. I'm just using the saturation last to add some extra snapping crack. I'm cranking the odd and even harmonics, and then I'm using the transient shaper once again. It's a night and day difference. And if I want to, I can bring down the output just a touch to finalize that same level. And then we have our toms. Now these toms I'm going to play together because they really do work together. So let's play right here. They sound amazing. Let's bypass the K-strip. Really good with the hemisphere emulations. That's the original toms, and here's with just K-strip. Even with that, it's doing a good job. So K-strip on tom 1, K-strip on tom 2, and then we have K-strip on tom 3. So if we take a look at this, I'm using different saturation here. For tom 1, we have the SSL, a little blend between odd and even harmonics. I'm doing some EQing here with SSL, API, feedback, mid, or I guess medium knee, and then a little bit of transient shaping. Tom 2 gets a Neve, EQ, and saturation with a soft knee on the API compressor. And then again, the transient shaper. And then finally, tom 3 gets API, messing with mostly odd harmonics using the API EQ and the SSL compressor, again, using the transient shaper. So once again, this is just the toms. Right, that sounds fantastic, right? But with K-strip on, it just sounds like a cannon firing off. Sounds amazing. That's it for the microphones that I own or that I use for my thing. The hi-hat is an SM137. It was a friend of mine, Derek Old's microphone. I did not like this microphone on the hi-hat, but I didn't feel like using my SM81s. But let's check this out. So this is the hi-hat. Just some very simple EQ, saturation, and compression. The compression is mostly to kind of soften the way it sounds. And I have noticed with this compressor, when you mess with the attack and release controls, you can really hear it. Not saying that it's aggressive or too obvious, but it's doing a really good job of acting like how a compressor acts. It responds properly. Don't care about stereo width. I'm using a little bit of transient shaping. And yeah. For the overheads, we are using Warm Audio KM84 clones. And for this, we're using the API, SSL, and Neve compressor. So in that order, API distortion, SSL EQ, Neve compression. And you can really hear the snap on the Neve compression. And I actually like that. I wanted that kind of sucked in sound because together, I think it sounds absolutely amazing. Fantastic. Moving on, we have the other instruments. So we have congas, low and high. This is the EQ and compression and saturation. And for this, you'll notice that we are using the transient shaper. I have the EQs essentially set at a very similar way, except for the higher mid frequency band. And then I'm using the Neve distortion. For the darbuka, we are using Neve all the way, doing a little bit of like tonal shaping. And yeah, the percussion sounds like this. Keep in mind, this is a live recording of a festival, so pretty good. These recordings are coming out pretty good. So here's the percussion and drums. Really giving it a lot of life, and it's doing it really, really easily. The bass is really fun because I am using Complex as my compressor at the end, and then I'm using the K-strip to kind of shape the tone. This is a DI, so take a look at this. And listening to this in the mix is pretty fantastic. We'll mute everything else. It just sounds super fat and spanky. The K-strip on the saxophone is pretty simple. I'm using some saturation, a lot of API pretty much everywhere else, and then I don't think I'm using the transient shaper at all. The first time I don't use it. So this is the saxophone. Just got rid of that honkiness. And this is a BLX, a Shure BLX using a Beta 98. Really good mic. Really good mic. I actually used to use those on toms before I got the universal audio ones. It's just the BLXs have very bad conversion, and they're clearly sound different. If you use a QLX, it sounds significantly better. If you use a ULX, it sounds a little bit cleaner with the headroom. And if you use like an Accent, you get a much better signal. But he brought his own mic. We have the keys, top and bottom. And for this, I am using the Kiive Audio Lunchbox Amp Sim for echo and reverb. And then I'm using the Sound Toys Micro Shift for the low keys. And this is really just kind of giving it a lot of hype. This is all SSL. I really like SSL and keys. It's really weird. Like, DI'd instruments tend to sound really good on SSL. And so I'm using the high pass, low pass, using a lot of EQ to tonally shape this, and then using a lot of saturation and SSL compression. Same thing with the other one. I don't think these are the same settings. Let me double check. These are not the same settings. And then this is where I am utilizing the stereo width control. I'm using the high pass filter to prevent anything under a certain amount of frequencies, and I'm just cranking it. I'm making it super wide, and I really dig it, especially since I have delay and reverb before it, or even like a pitch shift. It just makes it sound huge, and in the mix, sounds great. Now for the vocal, this was recorded using a Beta 58 or an SM58 on a QLX, and it was very loud, very close to clipping those converters. QLXs are pretty good, but ULXs have a little bit more headroom, and then Accents are just super clean, and you use Dante on them. But yeah, this is the settings for this. Yeah, no gate, no anything, just a little bit of compression. I love this compressor for vocals. I think it just sounds good. It's a soft sounding compressor, whereas this is super snappy and aggressive. And the API is just, it's amazing. So let's try this out. So it's just kind of cleaning it up. And then for my effects, I have a vocal doubler and a vocal delay. What am I using for this? Vocal doubler from Waves and the PSP AudioWare Stomp delay. And then for the saxophone, I'm using the Audioscape reverb. I love this thing. And yeah, that's the whole thing. So let's take K-strip out of the equation and listen to it one more time. Maybe right here. Massive difference. I am topping everything off with using N-Fuse at the end as my mix bus processor. Everyone knows I use this thing. I love the saturation on the Neve, and then I love the SSL bus compressor. I didn't realize this, but either on a full version or the update, they added the high frequency compressor that's on the original Fusion. And I'm using that thing. It sounds so good combined with the SSL bus compressor. I'm using a tiny bit of that Neve stereo widening. And let's just take a listen.
بیا با هم بریم خونه بی تو خونمون یه زندونه هنوز عکسی که با هم داشتیم روی تاقچه پیش گلدونه.
It just sounds so good. It gels it together. It makes it sound louder even though it's not louder. And it's just this saturation is the best saturation I've ever heard. I'm saving up to buy a unit just because this plugin made me love the Kiive, what is it, Master Bus Processor, whatever, the Kiive unit. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I will leave links down below to Kiive Audio and to the KStrip and the N-Fuse. And in my honest opinion, I love Kiive Audio stuff. I think it is the best modern plugin company that's out, in at least one of the best. I have a handful of plugin companies that I use daily. Kiive Audio is literally number one. I use them everywhere on every session. FabFilter, PSP AudioWare, and a couple others. There's really not that many more that I use daily, but stuff like, Spitfire Audio, their reverb's amazing. This is just on there as one of the best channel strips, but this is definitely on there as one of the best channel strips I've used in a long time. And it kind of takes me out of that funk where I'm getting bored of console emulations, because this is giving me multiple consoles and multiple EQs and multiple compressors. What I would love to see is maybe if Kiive Audio can do extensions or add-ons eventually, or come out with a new version in a year where they add, like the brown knob and the black knob for the SSL, and add the APIs, graphic EQ, and then maybe do a Kiive 1081 and 1073. I think that would be amazing, but that's just me wanting a bunch of extra stuff. This thing's pretty amazing as it is. Very happy with it. Anyway, this is Jeremy with Ra. I will see you guys later. Links down below. Bye.